Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to United for the lovely snacks that we have today as well. I want to welcome Sarah. She's going to take us through their adoption story of AppDynamics at United, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Yeah, in case you're wondering why you have snacks, well, it's twofold. One, bribery always helps. Second, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but United is now we are serving free snacks on our planes. And in our morning flights, we provide Stroop waffles, which is what we brought you today, which are thin waffles with a caramel in the middle, and we actually promote with your cup of coffee to put it on top so the steam warms it up and melts it. So, as Abel said, my name is Sarah Griffith. I'm IT manager at United Airlines. This week marks my 6-year anniversary with the company. I've been in IT for about 18 years now. Today what we're going to do is walk you through our story of adoption. We're going to do everything from before we actually, invested time and efforts into AppDynamics, to our POC, to where we are today in production and our ongoing adoption story. I'm hoping that this maybe will provide insight and ideas for you on your story for your adoption. Whether you're just beginning or already fully, involved, I think it can, provide some ideas. So actually, before we get started, I'm kind of curious, how many people in the audience today have AppDynamics in their environment today? Oh, that's great. How many are having struggles with adoption? Okay, great. So to kind of give you a snapshot, I'm just going to really just dive into kind of the meat of everything. So I'm just going to give you a snapshot of our environment. We have about 1,500 applications, about 1,400 servers, 28,000 different monitors, and this also is about 10 different monitoring tools, give or take. So you can imagine it's multiple panes of glass for the monitoring tools, as well as knowledge documents, as well as ticketing. It's multiple things that we were trying to look at when we're troubleshooting issues. Also, we have about 4,000 people in IT. About 1,500 of those are in development, and surprisingly, about 400 of those are in operations. So you can see just with the numbers where we're running pretty much with our hair on fire during issues. So my team is the application monitoring team. And I think it's important to note that because it does tell a story of our adoption. It shows that, first of all, the team already has the expertise with application monitoring tools. They understand the history of the different applications. They have some of the relationships also already built. And really critical to our story was that we had both expertise for Java and .NET. That definitely helped because we were able to take off running with two different types of implementations. And with that, also, we already had access to all of the systems, and all of this contributed to us to be able to just take off running with this project. I will say that last year, this time we were here, we hadn't implemented anything. We hadn't even started a POC. We were actually going through the training programs that they had at the conference. And that also helped us to be able to take off running with the project. So where we were before, we had legacy application monitoring tools. These tools required a lot of time and a lot of sitting with the development to be able to instrument an application. To be quite frank with you, it took sometimes a month to be able to really build monitors with some of the applications we had. And it sometimes required us to get application architectural diagrams to understand what they were trying to do. But worse than that, we were always in a troubleshooting firefighter kind of mode. It was very rare that developers were coming and saying, you know what, we want to be proactive. We think these are possible potential issues. majority of the monitoring that we were building was really after the fact. You know, an issue had occurred. We really needed monitoring to be able to cover that. So because of the time and the size of the teams, it was also unsustainable. We unfortunately became a bottleneck in some situations to be able to deploy these monitors as quickly as possible. We were more in a reactive state than proactive. So what we tried to solve for, I think this is a similar story from what I heard last year from many different companies. We were trying to reduce MTTR. It was a constant state of our monitoring was too stale. The applications, it was hard for us to keep up with the dynamic changes of applications. We also had very limited visibility into the applications. Because again, we had to sit down with the developers and really understand their application in order to help them instrument it. In addition to that, we were drowning in alerts. And quite frankly, in the operations space, we were fed up. We were tired of the monitoring tools not giving us the insight that we needed, and we were being held accountable. We actually have a daily call every morning, actually two, one at 7:30 every morning and the other one at 8 o'clock, to review the issues that happened over the past 24 hours. And what did we do to help resolve that issue? What was the cause of that problem? Early socialization. So really, after evaluating AppDynamics, at this point, we're starting our POC. I think this is also kind of interesting. It became almost comical. My boss and I, we were in a competitive spirit to see who could promote AppDynamics more. There were times that we were a couple feet away from each other, promoting to different teams. Hey, look at this cool tool. We just had to drop agent. It took us just a couple hours, tops, to instrument this full application. And look, it's already building out this dashboard, building baselines. And we were also keen to target an application that was near and dear to everybody's heart at United. And that's our self-reservations for our own personal vacations. So the two types of people that we really found that we were focusing on promoting these and socializing were people who we knew they were going to be future evangelists. We knew that they had that fire and they're super excited to see this new technology. And plus, they had seen our existing monitoring tools and were also fed up with them. The other ones we focused were the skeptics. I think we all know those people, right? The ones who just right out of the gate, oh, what is this? What kind of overhead? Just, just standard questions, right? So we targeted them. The other critical thing is that we focused not just on certain levels. We did top-down, bottom-up socialization. So we were joking as my boss is, promoting to the VPs and the managing directors in our organization. I was promoting to the developers. And between the two of us, we feel like we covered all of IT. Selling points. So what exactly did we say? Well, for us, it was honestly an easy sell. We were not happy with our tools. It wasn't giving us what we needed. We really, truly let the tool speak for itself. Just kind of show how it, dynamically is building baselines, building business transactions, and part of it also was an education point, right? Teaching people what is a business transaction. Start getting them familiar with, the lingo. We also were promoting that it's a new way of thinking of monitoring from what we've done in the past. Instead of being focused on a particular service, you're trying to take a step back and look at the whole application. Look at the business transaction and see how it's communicating in the system. We're no longer needing architectural diagrams. Just give me a list of your host names. That's all I need. And then we can instrument your application. So I think it's also important to note that because we focused on upper management, it goes without saying, that's huge in adoption. You can use that for leverage. So when you are meeting with those skeptics who are pushing back and resistant to yet another monitoring tool that's promising more of the same, well, this is a new enterprise tool, right? There's power behind those words, right? there's benefits to this tool that we haven't seen before. It was really just, focusing on what we hadn't had before is really where the selling points for us was. In addition to that, because we had upper management buy-in, it also allowed us to have expedited changes. So, and I'm sure as most companies, we have, rigid processes to be able to deploy changes into our environment, right? You have to document everything to the nines. So this allowed us to expedite a lot of that because we did have buy-in from upper management. So as we decided, we selected AppDynamics and we started our project. There were several things that we were, right out of the gate we had to decide. And because of the nature of our team, on the smaller side, we're definitely leaner. Because of that, we decided we wanted to go with a SaaS solution instead of doing on-prem. It's one less thing that we have to, worry about. Also, in addition to that, we tackled our instrumentation a little bit differently. We went to the most critical, most noisy, most problematic types of applications. The reason being, because these have the most visibility. So right out of the gate, the success stories are visible to everybody in the organization. Also, in addition to that, we focused on sorry, I'm spacing. So because we focused on the most critical applications, it was an impact to a larger audience of people. And what that did is also, back to the skeptics, it made them actually see in a real-world environment how it was reacting to, and helping us troubleshoot applications. Open accessibility. So this was also another one that we really focused on as far as, or really thought through. It helped us bridge the gap between the conversations that our developers and operations teams, our application support teams were really having. It allowed we basically gave developers read access to the system, and we empowered our application support teams to be power users. So because of that, they went through more rigid training and really to understand how to build their own health rules, how to build their own dashboards. And because they were the SMEs on their application, it allowed them to be able to kind of drive the way that the alerting needed to be set up. And it also bridged the gap between the development team and the operations team, because now that the developers were now working with the operations team to find out, to instrument any additional changes or whatnot in the AppDynamics. Also, we felt that now that we selected the list of the critical applications, we didn't want to just come and say, here's your new tool, drop it, walk away, as we have done in the past with some of our other application monitoring tools. Instead, we decided to really focus on their needs. So we sat down with the teams, and we actually called them our interviews. And we sat down with them to understand the list of their servers, what kind of application it is, and then also show them, tailored a demo of AppDynamics to their needs. And when I say that, for example, maybe our United mobile app, their needs are going to be different than maybe our cargo applications. So we really focused on things that they were interested in. And along the way, it was interesting because, again, sometimes you're meeting skeptical people. This is when they start asking, well, what kind of overhead is this? And this is when we started talking about, it was between, we were seeing 2 to 3% overhead on your environment, which is significantly less than what we had in the past. And again, we just let the tool speak for itself. Train the trainer. So we were actually, I think, the very first, yeah, we are, okay. We were the very first folks to actually get the Train the Trainer program from AppDynamics. And they gave us the operations training and the power user training. What we found is it didn't quite work for our environment, or for our needs, quite frankly. So like I was saying, we have our developers with read access. They don't need operation training. They want to know really, truly how to troubleshoot things. Also, the training program was, I think it was a 3-day course, if I'm not mistaken. And let's be honest, nobody has time to devote 3 days to training. So what we did is we actually really struggled with this. We tailored down the training. We boiled it from 3 days to 2 hours. And we really took a step back and said, okay, what do we really need out of these classes? Well, to be honest, all you need is a developer to be able to troubleshoot on his own. Also, who we selected for our trainers was also very important. That also helped with adoption. We didn't just select people in operations, or we didn't just select people on our team. We picked people who maybe were a part of those teams that we knew were really skeptical. So that way it was, inside infiltration, if you will. But I think the key to this is that having training available, sometimes that's all that people are a little bit nervous about. When they see something in AppDynamics, they don't want to necessarily speak up that they're seeing an issue because they're not confident in what they're seeing. But what we're telling them, if you're seeing it, something is red, bring it up. That means there's something that's not right. And that was really key to empowering people to feel confident to speak to it. Ask the expert. This one honestly just came out of necessity. It wasn't something we planned. Again, with a team that's really rather lean, we were getting the same questions from all the teams. It was the same questions of what kind of overhead? What do you need in order to troubleshoot this issue? How do you find a memory leak? And the DBA is also asking similar questions. So instead of getting bombarded with emails and messengers and phone calls and walk-ups, we set a weekly meeting open to everybody in IT. And it started out with a format of, we're going to give it tips and tricks. We're going to show the latest P1 issue that we had and troubleshoot it from there. And how you would have found the issue in AppDynamics. And then we left it open to Q&A. So that way, when we're getting those similar questions, everybody else can hear it. And we also recorded all the sessions. There were also times that we brought in experts from AppDynamics to talk about a subject. For example, one of the hot topics we had were from the DBAs. There was some distrust. There was some, concerns about using AppDynamics versus the tools that they've had today and how that would work. So we brought in a DBA expert from AppDynamics, and they gave a demo. And it actually really completely turned it around. We went from a team that was absolutely skeptical of AppDynamics to the biggest advocates. They are now actually pushing the other application teams to get their databases instrumented. Post-implementation. So again, like I said, we didn't want to just come in, here's your new monitoring tool, and walk away. Now we followed up with those interviews and met with those critical application teams, sometimes not even critical, following up with all the application teams actually, and said, okay, so now that we have your application instrumented, it's, the baseline's matured, let's take a look at what we're seeing. And that's when you start bringing up, okay, here's the things that we're seeing that are going red. Maybe this is what we found when you had an issue. And then we start having the conversation about refinement. Are these actually critical business transactions to your application? Or do we need to put it in an all other bucket? That also has been beneficial because it also empowered them to make them feel comfortable to speak to what they're seeing in AppDynamics. It also, most importantly, took off the training wheels. Because they're empowered, now we're able to focus on implementing and refining other applications. And I think this is just, an example of, at the same time, we're also able to instrument individual app teams to manage their applications so that they can understand looking at the trends, changing your timeline, looking to see what's a trend, whereas if you're zooming in, right, you're seeing, oh, well, this is a huge spike in errors. When you step back, okay, so this is something that's reoccurring. Is this a best practice? Is this really an issue? Is this something that you need to change? And quite frankly, we saw several application teams going in and fixing their applications in order to get to green in AppDynamics. Another interesting one that also is it was rather grassroots, came out, and it's been also, they've been huge advocates, is our enterprise QA team. We told them, our pre-prod and controller, you guys own it. This is yours to do with what you need. So now they are actually using that with every single deployment. So now when the developers are coming and saying, hey, we have a big change, we need to deploy this, EQA is coming and saying, well, you need to have this in AppDynamics before you can go to production. That has been huge. I think it's also been, very powerful is alerting. Because now that we've turned on all the alerting from AppDynamics to go into our L1 command center, it's really, really, it's brought a lot of interest to the developers because they want to have, first of all, nobody wants to be woken up at 3 a.m. for an ongoing issue that is really, truly not really an issue. And when I say that, I'm talking about maybe it's informational data being stored as a critical exception, right? It's not really an error. It's just not really a best practice. It needs to be maybe more logged as, informational or warning. So because of that, all of a sudden everybody's very interested to make sure that they have the correct business transactions, that they're meeting the best standards for their code, so that their applications are not going to wake them up in the middle of the night. In addition to that, I mentioned earlier that every morning at 7:30 and 8 o'clock, we review what happened over the past 24 hours. Now it's become a situation where those conversations are also slowly getting transformed. Because it's no longer a case of, well, is your application, it's more of a case of, is your application instrumented, and why aren't you in AppDynamics? So now there's a competitive spirit going on between the application teams. It's also been interesting because we made it accessible to everybody in IT, it's given us visibility that we never had before. It was actually quite surprising to me to see the amount of connections between all the applications and how everything really truly is a network in our environment. So as I was saying, today's conversations have completely transformed. When we have a P1 and we're all hands on deck trying to troubleshoot, the conversation is now, well, what are you seeing in AppDynamics? And it's been really interesting because now even our network operations teams are looking at AppDynamics and even pointing out issues that they're finding. Most importantly, I think is, it's been a big conversation that we've had internally in our company is to build trust again for our internal customers and our external customers. With our previous tools, we weren't building trust. There were times that when we're troubleshooting, the app teams were actually, quite frankly, blaming monitoring for their issues. Oh, there's too much overhead. It must have been the monitoring that caused this. I have not heard that kind of conversation since we've been implementing AppDynamics. No longer am I hearing, I think AppDynamics is causing the issue. But now it's like we're building trust. I feel like we've built trust as application monitoring team to the rest of our environment, or to the rest of IT. Also, to go back to MTTR, actually, we've started focusing on mean time to detect, on how long it takes our L1 team to troubleshoot, or to actually find the root cause. And so we pulled out the metrics here of applications that we have instrumented with AppD, before and after. So that's why you see kind of an increase towards the end. But I think there's still room for improvement. We still can improve even more than this. But right out of the gate, I mean, we started our project and started really kicking it off in February. Year's not out, and we've already seen major improvement. So kind of to summarize everything, actually, I think right now we're going to go, okay. So let me go back 1 second. Sorry, I went ahead of myself. So what the future is for our adoption, it's something that's ongoing, right? So the next thing we're doing is more of, I think, what we are considering a social experiment. We're looking at actually grading our applications based on the performance that we're seeing with them in AppDynamics. And Richard Paul from AppDynamics is going to give us a demo of what we're working on.
Hey guys. Am I on? You guys can hear me? Yeah? Okay, cool. You would think there was some huge team doing this implementation, right? Did you guys see the screenshot where one of those circles had, I think it was an old screenshot, it's like 14,000 nodes? You would think there's a huge team doing it, but this is the team, these guys. And then the management team right there, Bill Heinlein and Kelly, yeah, right? So we had a Java expert, Carl, and .NET expert, Bill, right, doing this stuff. And then Sarah doing the project management, and we as professional services coming alongside and helping them out, okay? So it was a huge achievement with a small team. I would encourage you guys to talk to these guys, get to know them, because there's a certain DNA that's in this team that's very special, okay? So what I'd like to do now is kind of walk you through, because the engagement with United was like about maybe 3 or 4 months study work. But it was very difficult, but a lot of fun. And in keeping with the fun aspect of it, I'd like to take you guys into our boardroom, well, our conference room, and show you guys how we kind of work together, all 4 of us. I'll try to do it. We'll see how it comes off. So everybody had that waffle, right? Let's see a show of hands who ate it. Okay, you know in Matrix, blue pill, red pill? Too late. You guys eat it. So once you've eaten that waffle, you're now part of the the United team. And AppDynamics United. You're now part of the United team. So I'm going to take you into a conference room, right? So as you heard Sarah said, they've gone from, so post-implementation, getting a lot of value, right? Some people coming along, getting great value from the product. So how do we take this and transition it and make it a process so that we can, get the value consistently across all the applications, okay? So this is where this stuff, so the legal notice, I got to switch. Okay, let's see how this goes. Hopefully. Yep. Let me just pull this out and put it back in. Let's see. I think it's going to go. Oh, awesome. Thank you. All right, legal notice, mumble jumble. All right. So you guys are part of the team. You're alongside myself, Bill and Carl. Sarah is now your boss. You guys answer to Sarah. So now Sarah comes along and says, hey, we've been seeing all this good value, right? How can we build on the momentum we're seeing, right? How can we drive more value from AppDynamics? How can we manage hundreds of apps and teams, all right? So you guys kind of huddle, we all huddle, and we kind of come up with, hey, we've had 2 major scoring events, right? One was Cubs winning the World Series, and the other one we won't get into, right? How about we score the applications, right? What does that look like, right? So we kind of come up with a theme. So application scoring can capture an application's journey and highlight the efforts of individuals. There's 2 parts of that I want to touch on. One is being able to trace the journey of an application from the beginning of time, once we instrument it, across to constantly getting better, right? And then the other aspect is, once you score things, you create some drama, right? What if I told you guys, hey, your application is a score of D, right? I don't think you guys are going to be too happy about that. So it creates this drama, creates this tension, but ultimately, you want to focus on the individuals. It's individuals behind those apps they're working tirelessly, doing long hours, or whatever, to make those apps better, right? So let's somehow, out of the system, get those stories coming out, right? Just like the sporting events, Cubs winning the World Series, right? You invest, and then you see the individual stories of the individual players coming out, right? So maybe we should be in the game of people, right? So now, who knows how to program in Node.js? Raise your hand. Okay, first person went up. 2 hands up. Carl, you see him? Yeah. Okay, so that's our Node.js expert. Who knows MongoDB? Our MongoDB expert down there. Okay, AppDynamics REST API. Who's good in that? All right, oh, that guy. Okay, cool. So you guys are now the team. We go off. We want to score applications. How are we going to generate this? How are we going to create this? So we write a Node.js app, talking to a MongoDB database, and we're using the AppDynamics REST API. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like. So now we have grades. You guys could see that? Let me try and zoom in there. Okay, that might be a little better. So now we have grades. So now we have 80 this is just test data, right? So our friend here is doing a proof of concept for us. So we have grades. We have A, B, C, D. We have 80 applications, and the A grade has 10 applications, all right? And I gotta zoom out to click on this. All right, so once we click on the A grade, now we can see the history of our A grade. Right? We can see that it began with four applications, and now it's going to trend up to 10 applications. So ultimately, the goal is to get all our applications into A, right? So A should be going like a rocket ship up if everything worked out well, right? So now we can actually track the grades. So within that grade, we actually have the individual applications, right? So now we can see that the individual application has gone from a grade D to C to B to A, right? So it's actually so we're actually tracking the individual grades on the particular application over time, right? Yeah, and so yeah. So we come back, we show Sarah our proof of concept, and by the way, this took us 5 seconds to do, right? So our friends there built this thing in 5 seconds. Okay, awesome job. So we come back and we show Sarah our proof of concept. She takes it to Bill and Kelly, and they approve it. So now we get to write this thing. Oh boy. And she's given us 10 seconds to do it. Okay, so what does this look like? So now we got to figure out, okay, what's really in a grade? Well, how do we really grade an application? What does that look like? Okay? Oh, in this particular case, I said what's in the score. Because the score is actually 2 things. One is, so how we do this? All right, this is getting tricky part. So now put on your thinking hats. You're part of the team. All right? So what we'll do is each application will have basically 4 health rules. You have app health D, app health C, app health B, and A. Now, it's the same set of metrics, just the thresholds are different. Right? So for instance, app health D, it says you can have 50% slow transactions. App health A might say you only have 5%. So the thresholds get a lot harder. Right? But the mere fact that app health B in this case is actually enabled, that's how we know that that app is associated with the B grade. So we do some pattern recognition, string pattern recognition to know which grade is associated with each app. So now we can actually associate a grade based on health rules to an app. Okay? So now we say, okay, now let's go build this. So our friends here, we're going to go off and actually build this thing. All right, so we got the main concepts down. And where's my mouse? Okay, there we go. Okay, so what does this look like? So now we're actually pulling data from the controller. All right, so now this thing is actually live. All right, so now we can see, hopefully you guys can see. I'll just zoom in on this one. So let's just take, for instance, this B grade. So we have 17 apps associated with the B grade, okay? So once I click down on that, I can see that the trend on the B grade is going up because I fudged data last night, all right? And then you can actually see an interesting story here. So this app was initially assigned a grade A, and after some time, we demoted it to grade B. So you can promote and demote apps based on grades, right? And it's all based on the number of incidents. So notice here, we have number of incidents. You can see 400, 300, and 200, right? So basically, I can now click down on this. So since we're tracking this information, I can actually see where this app is actually struggling. So for that particular date range, right, we can see that the health rule violations were mainly for CPU utilization, and that's where all those critical incidents came out of. Okay, so you can get a quick idea on an app where it's struggling, right? And then you can actually click on view events and actually drill into the controller. And it'll show you for that time frame, and you can actually drill into the critical incidents, all right? Now, so one benefit of doing this, so we now associated apps with grades. We're tracking the number of incidents. One interesting side effect of this is that we can now get a picture of all the incidents, all the critical incidents across all your apps, all right? So now we can actually drill down and say, you know, at this time period, who was using most amount of, right? Who was using the most amount of incidents? So who's generating the most amount of incidents, okay? And we could kind of drill down and further, and again, we can see the view health rule summary and see where that app is struggling, right? Now, going forward, what we would like to do is a couple things. One is, I know which app that I'm drilling down into. I know the time of day. I know which health rules. How about we just go scan some snapshots automatically and try and figure out where the hotspots are? So we could generate a report and say that, hey, this is where these snapshots are struggling. Or analyze the configuration on the app. Do they have any custom rules? Do they have any custom health rules? You know, is this app even configured correctly, right? Or generate another report and says, hey, here are the top 10 things that the team should actually work on, right? So you can kind of quickly drill. So this is kind of an easier way to manage hundreds of apps at a higher level and then kind of drill down into it, okay? So I'll just show you one more report that the team, our friends here, built so quickly for us, all right? Oh, where's my mouse again? That's so strange, the mouse disappears like that. Okay, so downgrade. Okay, so now we can, it's almost like a stock market now. Who are the movers and shakers, right? And this report kind of tells us who should be upgraded and who should be downgraded, right? And similar for upgrading, and then we don't have the feature yet, but ideally, you just click on that and associate the grade. That'll actually go out and automatically update the health rules for us, enable and disable which health rules we want. So now, right. So key benefits, and then we'll open up to some questions, all right? So this, it's fostering a winning culture because we're scoring the apps. Everybody wants to be on the winning team, all right? We're focusing on people because ultimately, you want to see, let's go back here. Ultimately, you want to see, let's do this. My mouse keeps disappearing. Right. This D, this app going from grade D all the way to grade A, somebody was involved. Either a couple individuals or a team was involved. How they did it, what did they do, what's the motivation? And try and capture that and then share it with the rest of the company, right? Share it with the entire organization if you had to, right? That promotes a winning culture, right? Applications on the same grading system. This is huge, right? Now all the apps are graded at the same level automatically and not by anyone. It's actually based on the system, all right? And then standard health rules, right? So it's consistent health rules across all the apps. And then visibility across the organization. So now the CEO down to the QA tester know exactly the grade of this application, all right? And then driving application improvement. So you help the team say, hey, your D let's try and get you to an A. And they'll actually, hopefully, as Sarah said, it's a social experiment. Maybe next year we'll report back on how it went. But hopefully, the app improves, okay? And I'll put it back to Sarah, and then we could take some questions. So,
So I think it's also really important to mention that, I mean, like Richard's saying, I mean, it was a very lean team. But all three of these guys really have blown me away on this project. It's just been fantastic working with these guys. I mean, they're so intelligent and it's really, really willing to push the envelope. And I think that also contributed, quite frankly, to our adoption. Their passion was contagious to the other development teams.
oh, sorry, we have one more thing. The guys who raise their hands, you guys get bonus waffles.
Bonus waffles.
Thanks, Carl.
So really to summarize it up, obviously, like I was saying, our team definitely contributed to it. I mean, there's that passion, and it was contagious, and everybody was very eager to see, finally we have a tool that's going to give us exactly what we need and help us promote what we're trying to, find that root cause much faster. But then also socialization, right? I mean, the training classes, ongoing sessions that people can sign up themselves up for, making sure that the trainers that we had were, from different, different backgrounds in IT. That also helped. Focusing on the critical applications. That's real quick success right there. For both the application teams to be able to troubleshoot, but also for other teams. Well, if the high visibility apps are on AppDynamics, and look how the success stories were socializing themselves. Setting up open working sessions. I think sometimes people get a little bit intimidated. They don't want to point out the wrong issue. And building up that trust and saying there is no wrong issue. If you're seeing something red, something's not right. Whether we need to refine a business transaction or not best practices, or maybe it is the root cause. Having them have that confidence also is adoption, because then they become themselves advocates and evangelists for the tool. For the skeptical folks, the skeptics out there, working closely with them in the beginning, help them feel like they were part of the project. It was also their baby. Also being very responsive to their questions is critical, so that they feel that you're not leaving them hanging, for one, but also so that they understand how things are working. That also makes them trust the tool. Keep them involved, and honestly, quite frankly, the tool speaks for itself. It does it very well. Sitting down with folks and letting them see how it was building a baseline. And now the alert isn't what's the issue. It's now maybe the application, or maybe some code, or maybe something else that's really the root cause. But all in all, obviously, we are based out of Chicago, so I have to say it. Chicago Cubs might have won the World Series recently. And there's a lot of talk about it. Yay! There's a lot of talk, obviously it's been 108 years since the Cubs won the World Series. And there's a lot of talk about numbers, and there's 108 stitches in a baseball, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we did notice we have 108 applications instrumented in AppDynamics. So, dare I say, maybe AppDynamics really does fix everything? All right, so I think we're open to questions now. Yes?
Check. Okay. Do you still have 10 monitoring tools, or were you able to eliminate/consolidate through the process?
So we have been eliminating some of our monitoring tools. It's a cultural change, and some of it, is also looking to see how, like they were promoting on the main stage today, the new monitoring agents and how we can replace some of our other tools.
Okay, great. And then as a follow-up, you alluded to the fact that other teams trying to get other applications teams to come into the AppDynamics. Did you make that optional? And if so, why did you choose to go that route?
Okay. So we did not make it optional. That's where that came in. This is the new enterprise monitoring tool. We were, at the beginning of the project, we said we're focusing on all our tier 0, 1, 2 applications. So if they fell in that, they have to come over. So that's where that upper management buy-in really helped. Good question, so thank you.
That application grading and gamification to kind of pit the dev teams against each other, where did you build those dashboards? Are those actually built within AppDynamics, or is that something else that you use, some CRM tool? What did you do?
Our friend over there built it with Node.js and MongoDB. Yeah, it's a custom app.
And
that
it's
uses
just
the REST,
calling into
the REST
through
API.
the, okay.
Yeah.
Excel, as well for some of the
You can't hear me.
So, yeah, I mean, if you don't know Node.js, right, Richard, you could collect the data from the API, right?
Yeah, you guys could build this on your own. I mean, you use AppDynamics REST API, right? And you could pull all the house rules and critical incidents. You could build it on your own if you wanted to. Yeah.
I think there was another question over here, Carl.
Back. Yeah, I'm getting my 10,000 steps today.
He's getting his steps in.
So you mentioned 14,000 nodes or tiers, and you also mentioned a year back this time you hadn't started. So where are you in this journey, and how has the adoption been? I see all encouraged things, so it's good. We have similar struggles for now as of now. We have been a little more than a year. But I'm really interested to find like 14,000 nodes, 10 monitoring tools, like perfect use case. So of the 14,000, where are we now and what's next?
So I think we still have quite a ways to go. Because we were focusing on those critical applications, we didn't really venture too much down the automated path. And that's really our next steps. So it's more going to be, I think the future for us is, obviously the grading app, but also automating our deployments.
Unified.
Yeah.
You mentioned the alerts were being sent to your L1 operations team. How are the alerts being delivered there? Are you using SMS, email? What kind of mechanism are you getting those to the L1 operations team? And then what is the L1 operations team looking at? What type of interface do they have?
Okay, great question. So we actually are feeding those alerts into some of the existing systems that they were using previously. So it wasn't a big cultural change for them because they're already looking at those alerts in that pane of glass. To be honest with you, next year we're actually focusing on event correlation and replacing some of the tools that they're using today.
So how are you delivering those events? Are you using like a HTTP request template, or what type of mechanism are you using to get those from your SaaS controller into their consoles?
They have a product that uses the REST API to pull those.
Oh, you're
events.
using the REST API
Yeah.
to pull the events down and then determining, okay, I got you. Another question, if it's all right.
Sure, of course.
I see you have 108 applications. We have a large deployment, not as big as yours at this point, and we struggle with the granularity of the role-based permissions. One of the things we do is we give our developers permissions to do their own health rules, configuration, and alerts, all of that. I think you're doing partly like that. You're giving them to just a small subset. Do you have any issues when you give them permissions to create like service endpoints, information points, those application level permissions as opposed to tier level permissions, do you have any problems with them sometimes messing up the configurations for others within the application?
So we haven't had that problem, but again, when we had our developers only have read access. The operations folks are the ones who have, higher level of access.
Okay.
And they've all gone through power user training. Not to say that, it's not possible that they can't make mistakes, right?
We sent like 160 people last year through power user training.
Great.
But we're still having people mess up.
So also, I've, also touted that my team is there to support them. So at the beginning, it was a lot of them working directly with, Carl and Bill to understand how to manipulate those service endpoints and health rule violations and so forth. With that being said, also, we have a standard template for our health rule violations. We went with, 3 standard deviations from the baseline for health rule or for error rate, response times. What was the third one? Response times, error rate. There was one other one.
And the app health one.
Overall application health.
Right. Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Question?
I just wanted to make sure, going back to, I think that was the first question actually. So it was about whether it was optional, mandatory to actually onboard AppDynamics. So did I get you right that you sort of turned it around? So it was the development areas themselves, the application team owners, who now sort of had that as a success criteria to get AppDynamics monitoring their application?
So, and I'm sorry if I missed the question. So your question's what?
Did you sort of, you were not driving, or you were not actually doing all the instrumentation, all the agent deployment? So it was the development teams themselves or the application owners who did that?
So no, we were actually doing the implementation.
You did that? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we were working with the development teams and their operational counterparts and saying, this is a new enterprise tool, this is what it looks like, and we were doing the instrumentations. Mm-hmm. And maybe that kind of goes back to your question. So that wasn't just, here you go and you went through power user and you're now instrumenting your production, but rather we were doing it with them.
Okay, so then I'm really even more impressed than I was before about how you managed to do it. 108 applications in that short amount of time, being 2, 3, 4 guys on many accounts. So, and without any automation. Yeah. But going back to the initial thing, I was just aiming for what sort of the success criteria for what that's sort of mainly on your team to actually secure that the AppDynamics was rolled out, or was it sort of shared, or also on the development side that they actually had an accountability/responsibility for onboarding AppDynamics?
So it was my team. We were really just driving it. It was, we prioritized the applications that we wanted to instrument. We targeted those top applications, and we set up those interviews and demoed it, and we did the instrumentations for those applications. And then after that, that's what I was saying, we were following up with them.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I'm sure if you get Sarah a drink, she will be able to answer a lot more later this evening. But thank you so much.